Listen, the Ron Paul supporters in 2008 have got nothing on the Ron Paul supporters of 2012. The groundswell of momentum behind this guy in 4 years is unprecedented. I mean, what candidate? Look at Mitt Romney. I mean, Romney in 2008 has seen very little, growth or resurgence in the 4 years, and he's been running for 4 years. And he's seen very little growth, very little groundswell underneath him. In fact, what you find is the guy is actually performing more poorly in some states than he did in 2008. And yet, with Paul, my understanding is if you go state to state and you believe the numbers, which obviously are skewed anyways, but even by the bad numbers that you're getting out of a lot of these states, his support's grown by some 300% to 400%. That's an insane number. So
it is, and it's getting to the point where you can't even ignore it anymore.
Exactly, but they misunderestimated it. They misunderestimated who these people are. And part of the reason they did is because for too long, and I guess this is kind of the point of why we're talking, but for too long, media has been a part of this process. Look, the reason we started covering Congressman Paul, and people think that I cover him because I'm just a big Ron Paul guy who's trying to push my candidate and get him elected. And that's not true. It's simply not. The only reason that we started covering him was because somebody challenged me and said, why doesn't the media cover Ron Paul? And I thought that was kind of a silly statement. Why does the media not cover Ron Paul? I think that they cover him. I mean, who knows? I don't know. So I started looking into it, started watching more news critically and saying, well, why aren't they mentioning his name? And looking, is that true? And then I started realizing, you know what? It is true. I mean, you'll watch CNN, you watch Fox, MSNBC, they will not say his name. They'll put up polls where he's running second or first in the poll, and they'll leave him off the poll. His name won't even be on it. His picture won't be on it.
Well, what's so offensive about it, Ben, is even in coverage today, they'll say the three remaining candidates, and they'll just completely ignore that there's a fourth one there, and they talk about electability. But when you look at it, we have a former governor, a former senator, and a former Speaker of the House, and a current congressman. The current sitting elected official who people have chosen to put back in office, there's only one left. And they're saying that guy's the unelectable one.
That's right. Well, and they'll make this case that the Ron Paul supporters are a small but fervent group. Well, they're right about the fervent part. What they're wrong about is the small part. They're hoping they're a small part. They're believing and kind of wishing that it would be a small group of radical people who are a bunch of dope smokers who really only care about legalizing marijuana, and that's the reason they support this guy. That's what they're hoping for. And so they ignore all the issues of liberty. They ignore all the issues of presidential powers. They ignore all the issues of politicians who do not follow the Constitution. They ignore all the issues of monetary policy. And instead, they've tried to paint these people into a corner. And now I think it's even gotten worse, where they're pushing this narrative of he's so unelectable, he's so far outside of the mainstream that we can't even bother discussing him because it's a waste of time. And yet, consistently, this man polls beating Obama in a head-to-head contest when most of the Republican candidates do not.
And see, that's the part that I really almost find offensive, Ben, because when you look at it, the GOP has stated 4 years ago that, well, our primary goal is to get Obama out of the White House. Well, if that's your primary goal, then why not back the candidate that has the strongest chance of doing it? Back the candidate that's actually pulling people away from the DNC, that's pulling those independent votes. Back the guy with your party support that can actually stand a chance at getting Obama out of office. But that's not what they're after. So it leaves you with an obvious question. Since that's not what they're after, what are they really going for here? What's the objective?
Exactly, and I think that's the I guess the most insidious question, right? What are they?
It is
really after, and what is their goal in preventing this man from becoming president? And if he were to become president, how would it harm them? I mean, what are they protecting?
Exactly, because from a political standpoint, why wouldn't you embrace a candidate that is bringing millions of people into your party? That's the idea of having the party in the first place. Unify, unite together, draw people to our party, gain support for our causes. And if you have a party that has a candidate that's doing it, yet the party doesn't get behind that candidate, then the obvious question is one of, okay, then what are you trying to hide? What are you trying to prevent? What's your real objective? And you actually don't even want to answer it, because the only answer is actually frighteningly scary, because you just don't want to go down that I'm not a conspiracy theorist but trail.
Right. Well, and the problem is this, too, that when you look at, because you're talking about all these people who are coming into the party under this guy, but there's an even bigger issue than that. And that is the type, the demographic. Look, in TV and media, you know this, we're all about demos, right? Everything we do is about who's your demographic. You could say, I have 100,000 listeners. Okay, that's interesting to me. So who are they? The first thing an advertiser wants to know is, who are your demo? And you say, well, they're all people in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. Well, sorry, I'm not going to spend my money with you. Why not? Because you do not have a base with any future to it. You do not have a base of people and a base of listeners or viewers who are going to be engaged and are going to be good consumers. Okay, but you can apply the same system to politics. If you said, we have two candidates here, one of them has this enormous base of people that's growing and bringing all these people into the party, and the majority of them are under the age of 40, why would the GOP not want to grab all those people up? Instead of saying, we'll stick with the people who are in their 60s and their 70s and their 80s. That's who we want for our base. Really? Because in 20 years, all those people are gone.
Well, Ben Swann, it has been a pleasure. We're going to have you back, because there's so much more I want to talk to you about. You can catch him on Fox 19 and, of course, his reality check that is sending shockwaves coast to coast. And it does raise an interesting question. If media is after the perfect demo and Ron Paul has it, then why aren't they talking about him either? It would just make sense, because you would attract that perfect demo. So are they in bed with the politicians? Definitely leads to a scary question, doesn't it? All right, hour number one is done. We'll be back right after this. Don't go anywhere.